All right. Well, Martin Aylward, many of you know, and we're very blessed to be with him today for this final day of practice for 2022. Martin is the founding teacher with Sangha Live. And after spending many of his adult years living in Asian monasteries with Himalayan hermits, he settled in southern France and started a retreat center with his wife. He lives there now with his wife and family. And he weaves the depths of wisdom teachings into a clear and practical way into our daily lives to make it really accessible for us in a really beautiful way. He's also the director, one of the co-directors of the Mindfulness Training Institute, which is a beautiful program that trains other people to become mindfulness teachers. And he's also an author. And if you haven't read his book yet, Awake Where You Are, The Art of Embodied Awareness, it's definitely something that might be fun to read over the holiday season. Today's theme is a meditator's guide to the holidays, where we learn about wisdom, love, and boundaries. This day of practice is a mindful guide to the holidays. So whatever or however you choose to spend this time of year, this day of practice can help us navigate with a sense of groundedness and clarity. Martin is also teaching a longer form course with Sangha Live at the beginning of 2023 called Free Your Mind. And it'll be a beautiful way to lay a foundation for a strong meditation practice for beginner meditators. And I think it would really nourish also anyone who's interested, who's got an existing meditation practice. I want to let you know a little bit about how today will flow for anybody who's new to our day of practice. It's a 3-hour program, and we blend in longer periods of practice where maybe we do some walking meditation as well as sitting. There's guidance from Martin as well as teaching from him and time to interact with each other through breakout rooms possibly, but also time to ask your questions directly with Martin. So let's talk about how we can do that. Before I do that, I want to talk about the chat. So the chat, feel free to say hello with the whole Sangha right now and put in where you're logging in from so we can really get that sense of our global community together. When we start our meditation portion, it would be great if we could reserve the chat just for technical issues, which I can support from behind the scenes, so we can be in authentic meditation together. During the question and answer portion, though, however, you can click the raise your hand function, which is down below the video feed. And that will get you in a queue so Martin can call on you if there's time. But you can also type your questions directly in the chat so we can get to them that way as well if you don't want to come on screen. It's good to see your faces now. So if you feel capable in the very beginning here before we begin meditating to bring your face on, then Martin can get a sense of our whole community and who's here with us today. Let's see. I believe that's everything that was very important. We want to thank you for your registration fee today. A lot of our programs are free of charge. We operate on Dana, and Dana is that spirit of giving out of a sense of generosity for the value you receive. So feel free to check out what we have going on at Sangha Live. I will put some links to our further ways to connect with each other in our Sangha Live Connect towards the end of the session today, so you can keep your practice going with each other over the holidays when we take a formal break from offering programs. And we will be back in 2023. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Martin.
All right. Hello, friends. Hello, hello. Very nice to see you all. Just a moment. There we go. Yeah, very nice. And nice to see more of you on screen now. Just gives a little sense. And the encouragement, I think if you put your video on, it's something of a kind of, it's a way of being held within the sense of Sangha, of being here. And, if we were all sitting in a physical Dharma hall together, it's like you'd have no choice other than to give your full attention in a way. And putting your video on is a bit like that, right? It's like, oh, you're here. And it's just the encouragement to have your gaze and focus be held by being here. And if the video is off, and you may have one or other good reason for that, but if the video is off, it's sort of easier to just be diverted and in some other way. So just the encouragement, hey, let's really show up together. All right. So it's nice to see you. I'm aware that it's just a week away from Christmas and 2 weeks away from the end of the year and a couple of weeks past Thanksgiving, and it's just in the midst of the holiday season, and I can hear the melody even as I say the words, the holiday season. I can hear the melody of that in the background, and it's sort of the rhetoric around the holiday season is one of goodwill and good cheer and happiness and coziness and connection and family and gift giving and appreciation and love and etc. etc. Very nice, and there can be more to it than that. So just before we start, I just like to ask you to reflect a little, like, what's your primary orientation right now to the holidays? And maybe the holidays primarily means Christmas for you, for example, or some other aspect. But given all that's going on, right, in your own life, in your historical family dynamics, in the current economic situation and the difficult financial squeeze, and in many places the kind of, certainly in the UK, a kind of breakdown of a lot of the social infrastructure at the moment. Yeah, what would be one word? What would be one word? And one day to Hanukkah. Thank you, Josh. I knew Hanukkah was right around now somewhere, but okay, one day. Thank you. So maybe you're joyfully anticipating visiting family or receiving family. Or maybe you're a little bit ambivalently anticipating that. Or maybe you're downright dreading that, Or maybe you're not able to be with family for one or other reason. Or maybe you don't have family, right? So, there's a lot of scope for a lot of different situations here. So, I see a couple of you are putting things in the chat box, and actually I'm going to ask all of you to do that in just a moment. Right? So just to see if you had to come up with one word, right, that expressed your kind of primary orientation to the holiday times and the holiday events and however you're planning to spend the rest of the holidays. Just what would it? Wow. Okay, I'm starting to see them come in. Wow. So I won't be able to read them all because they're coming in really fast, but I'm just gonna read down the list a little bit. And as I read down the list, just notice what it's like to what the flavor is. And of course, there's a range of flavors, but let's just feel challenge, ambivalence, stress, pluses and minuses, wary, exhausted, reluctant, bewildered, exhausted, frazzled, anxious, alone, lonely, pressurized, frozen, distracted, hopeful, grateful, ambivalent, not belonging, wary of potential arguments, rest, ease, tired, alone, sense of magic, stress, bittersweet, connection, opening and closing, going inside, hopeful but ambivalent, dread, indifferent, ambivalent, an endurance test, conflicted, alone, uncertain, a multi-layered response. Okay, and on and on. So it's not that I'm trying to find a common thread in there. It's more actually to say, here we are. I think it's good for us to sit here in recognition that there's a wide variety of responses. And because there's a lot of focus on this time of year, if you turn on the news, or if you walk down into the shopping district of wherever you live, or whatever, that orientation, if you see the kind of advertising, not that I've seen any TV advertising actually, but I remember from previous times, just the pressure around the usual tropes of the holidays. And then here's all that from eagerness and anticipation, and to wariness and anxiety, or to aloneness and disconnection. A lot going on. So during our day-to-day together, I want to mostly make space for the fact that there's a lot going on. There's a few things I'd like to present, a few things that I think are really helpful as sort of practices of staying present in one's own sphere of experience, which is, of course, the whole ground of Dharma practice, but particularly staying present when one feels agitated or activated in some way. And there's no one who can agitate or activate us like our families, those that we love the most are those with whom also have the most complicated sort of interwoven generational karmic enmeshment with. So a few things that I want to explore in terms of ways of staying present, ways of recognizing and holding activation, and ways of managing boundaries as well. And then beyond that, I'd like to encourage you to just inquire a little and see what's going on for you, and to make some time where we can have some dialogue around all of that too. And before any of that, I thought before we get into any content or particular practices or reflections, maybe just a little simple sitting time together. Just like good old-fashioned ordinary meditation, and we can have 3 points for the meditation, right, which are sensing, it's that coming in to breathing body, to sensory immediacy, and sensing and settling, just allowing attention to settle into the breath, into the body, allowing muscles to settle into seated posture. And then thirdly, softening. Softening every time we notice those little habitual tension patterns in the shoulders or the jaw or the belly. So just the basic practice of being present, being here inside experience, and coming again and again and again to presence through sensing and settling and softening into being here. So 20 minutes then like this of meditating together. Sensing into your posture. To the feel, the aliveness of this breathing body. Settling your attention. Again and again, if necessary. and more if possible. Settling your attention inside the breathing. Settling into this intimacy of awareness and experience. Softening. Softening your face. Softening your breath. Softening your attitude to meditation. Sensing, settling, and softening. In such a way that whatever's happening, there can be room for it. There's room for the passage of thoughts without turning them into dramas. room for the dance of sensation. Room for the different flickering impulses that come and go. And anytime you find you've been pulled around, that you've lost your attention into one of those thought streams or impulses, and just a simple beginning again. Just, in the moment of noticing, then sensing into where you're at. Settling again into this moment, this breath. Just softening around the impulse or the story. So that as you're sitting, you can feel for a quality of ease, pleasure, relaxation. Sensing means really entering into the feel of being here. Settling means gently conducing towards a certain steadiness and ease, presence. And softening means relaxing. Means gently releasing again and again and again and again the physical tensions, the mental dramas that we keep finding showing up in our experience. Just a few minutes more of continuing to practice in this way. So I don't have a bell to ring, but what I'd like you to do just for this last minute or so of meditation is firstly just to really sense like the whole of your experience. So just the general whole feel of body sitting here. Maybe your attention has been mostly focused in one or other area, maybe just in the breath or in your belly or something, and just letting your attention expand into the whole field, physical experience, including whatever sense you have of the space around you, including the soundscape as well. so that the field of your awareness is just gently getting wider and more inclusive. The boundaries between self and world are soft, 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 soft. Sense of all that we call inner and that we call outer, that we call self and that we call worlds, just sort of one dance. All these flickering, changing phenomena. And then when you open your eyes and adjust your posture, see if here too you can just add the seeing and the movement into this field of awareness, so that the formality of meditation ends, but the continuity of presence, of practice, of awareness remains. All right. To sit with you a little. I'm just, because I don't have my usual audio set up, and I feel like I'm talking quite quietly, but just nod your heads enthusiastically if you can hear me very, very well and perfectly fine. That's nice. I like to be able to just speak. I don't want to have to kind of strain to speak, so it's nice to know that that works well. So, one thing I'm struck by, both now sitting with you in meditation and generally over whatever 35 years of practice, is how there's so many sort of technologies to meditation. So much of a kind of in the world of technique. So many interesting ways to meditate. But just the most simple, the most ordinary, just being present in the breath, just present in the body, for me is the absolute undisputed great pinnacle of meditation. It's that kind of great simplicity. Just, there's a line by Jesus, because we're coming up to Christmas: seek you first the kingdom of heaven, and all things will be added unto you. And maybe by the kingdom of heaven, what's really meant is just presence. I would say just sensing and settling and softening into presence. And then all things will be added unto your practice. That's certainly been my experience over these decades, that I don't really need to go looking for anything. Don't need to go looking for insights. God, where are those insights? Where can I find some insights? Right? Here. And I also don't need to go looking for problems. Right? Oh, well, there must be some problem to solve. No, then whatever problems I have, they'll show up here. So on the one hand, that's so ordinary. Right? Maybe another way of interpreting the kingdom of heaven is the kingdom of heaven is right here. Right here. So if we learn to be right here, all things shall be added unto us. All things actually can only show up right here. And so the whole of Dharma practice is really the endless journey of learning to be right here and discovering what it even means to be right here, and discovering what right here actually is. Where are the edges of right here? So sometimes there's plenty of interesting things one can speak about or explore to do with different nuances or aspects of practice. but often I'm struck by the way all the nuances and all the facets are really just versions of how to be right here. So maybe that might be our orientating question as we go through the holidays. It's like actually finding out, how can I just be here? How can I be here graciously? How can I be here uncontractedly? How can I be here when things are difficult, maybe, or when people are difficult, or when people are very nice, but it's all a bit boisterous and hectic, etc., etc. So I'll talk about some of these nuances and facets, if you like, but on that basis, right, that they're all just expressions of how to be right here. And there's two things that I think that you can practice in meditation, maybe between now and the holidays, if there is much between now. I'm aware that I'm saying between now and the holidays, whereas sort of Christmas is the main holiday I have in mind. And I know that that's not the case for all of you. It may be that Thanksgiving was the main one and it's gone by. And maybe if Hanukkah is the main thing, then as we heard, that's tomorrow, etc. So please adjust for whatever fits your situation. But around being with others, being with family, whatever the context, it might just as well apply to being with colleagues, actually, or being in some social situation. That the mixture between wanting the contact, liking the contact, we all want, like, need contact. All of us want, like, and need contact. And yet we have different relationships to that. So some of us, might call it the more extroverted style, is to really seek out that contact that we like and want and need. And then when we're alone, we feel a little bereft or unregulated. In a way, that's a way of defining what does it mean to be extrovert. It means that we get our regulation. We get to feel okay, and through contact, we do sort of co-regulation or exterior regulation rather than interior self-regulation. So maybe for that, some of you, your style, even if contact with people is sometimes complicated or difficult or painful, the orientation, the extroverted orientation, is to kind of look for it. Where can I get some good quality contact? And then there's the more introverted orientation. The introvert also wants and likes and needs contact. And yet the sense is that how I get regulation is by withdrawing from contact. But contact, I like it, I want it, I need it, but it so often feels difficult or overwhelming or whatever, that I need to, when I would need to kind of regulate, the way I get to feel okay is by withdrawing and sort of taking care of myself. And that may be, you might recognize that as the orientation. Whether one's extroverted or introverted, that part is also true. We all need, to come back to ourselves in various ways. And then some of us are more, what would you call it? I was going to say borderline, but that sounds a bit harsh maybe, but ambivalent, or in the middle, where we find ourselves sort of pulled and pushed. When we're alone, we feel like, oh no, I should be with others. And then when we're with others, we think, oh, I should be alone. I can recognize that in my own sort of background and orientation. It's like, oh, it's never quite right. Being with others, I want to be with others. And then when I'm with others, oh, I want to be alone. So, that's the way we are. or at least one of those orientations. And so first, I think that's helpful, just finding what your own orientation is, not to pathologize it. It's not that, sometimes if we're introverted, we think, oh, I should be extroverted, right? Or if we're extroverted, we think, oh, and I can be a bit too much or a bit too loud, I should be more introverted. No, it's not that you should be different than you are, right? So that's the first thing, is just recognizing, oh, this is how I am. Not this is how I should be, but this is how I am. Not self-acceptance in some kind of passive way, oh, well, this is how I am, as if there's nothing I can do about it. But neither that this is how I am, as if there's something wrong with that. So just recognizing without pathologizing one's own orientation. And then seeing, okay, well, so how can I manage that skillfully? If I'm extroverted, how can I enjoy the contact with others, enjoy socializing and sharing stories and laughing together and whatever else you like to do? How can I enjoy contact with others without losing myself and getting carried away? If one's introverted, how can I actually make the most of enjoying the quietude and simplicity of aloneness without that becoming isolating or rejecting of others and of contact? And if I'm more ambivalent about that, how can I acknowledge and move between those two and be grounded enough to show up in the contact and show up in the aloneness, rather than just pulling for the opposite of what's happening each time. And of course, the answer to all of those things, in a way, is that basic practice that we referred to, just presence. Presence and wisdom. But you can't fabricate wisdom. I mean, you can't really fabricate presence either, but you can keep choosing presence. You can keep remembering presence. You can keep coming back to presence. You can keep recognizing all the things that get in the way and softening those things, so that presence more naturally becomes the home, and then wisdom is completely naturally the results of that. So, next question becomes, what gets in the way? And particularly in those orientations, right? The extroverted or introverted or ambivalent orientation. When it comes to other human beings, which is what the contact is all about, right? It's what being with others or being alone is all about. When it comes to contact, what most gets in the way of being present? You may know the answer to that, or you may not. And if you don't, in a way, that's the place of real possibility, because that's where we can start to just gently inquire, keep finding out. So maybe just holding that for now, we'll get into it a bit more, but holding it as a rather open question. What gets in the way of me being present? And present in this sense means just available to myself, knowing where I am, alive in my embodied experience, and not overwhelmed by activation. There may be some activation. I may be feeling, a little agitated or suspicious or whatever. But presence means when there's enough space to be tracking that, rather than just completely caught up in it. What gets in the way of being present? And you might want to write a couple of notes. Some of you look like you are writing, so if that's helpful, feel free. Or you may just do it in reflection, but often our reflections go a little bit, round and round the houses. So sometimes it's helpful to write So first of all, in terms of contact, being with other people, whatever your primary, your orientation, whether you feel extrovert, introvert, or thank you, Lynn, for the term, ambivert. When you're with others, what most gets in the way? Being present. When I'm with others, what most gets in the way of being present? Maybe it's a pattern that you recognize of needing to please others or impress others. Maybe it's that kind of background anxiety that you're busy wondering or doubting what others are thinking of you. Maybe it's trying to conform to some kind of self-image of how you think you should be, that you should be witty, or you should be intelligent, or you should speak, a certain amount within a conversation. What most gets in the way in being with others? And then what most gets in the way of being present when you're alone? What most gets in the way of being present when you're alone? On the one hand, it would seem, when you're alone, there's no distraction. You just can settle into oneself. And yet how often we might cover up the being alone with ourselves through busyness or distraction of one kind or another. And again, please don't pathologize whatever you find. I notice Marina's asking, when I say be present in this context, do I mean being authentic? Not necessarily, Marina. I'm never quite sure. I know it's a common phrase. I'm never quite sure what's meant by being authentic. I mean, I would say internally one's being authentic, but you could be present and not be being very authentic externally, right? For example, if you're with your family over the holidays, right? Being authentic might say I'm speaking my truth, but speaking my truth might be quite hurtful to other people. So internally authentic, present means I'm aware of what's going on with me and I've got room to process it internally. That's what I mean by being present. I'm in contact with what's happening. I'm open to what's happening. I'm tracking what's happening, and I'm not overwhelmed by what's happening. But I might be choosing to not say all the things that are on my mind. Right? I might be choosing to just handle my own experience rather than telling other people about it. So I guess it depends what you mean by being authentic. All right. So before we go on, there's a couple of things I want to explore about sort of energetic presence, being present in terms of where one's attention is. We've spoken about the extroverted and introverted and ambiverted in a social sense or an external sense, but there's a way to track that in terms of, whether we're actually internally extroverted in some way. I know that sounds a bit strange, but how much, it's like, how wide do you let your sphere of awareness be? Sometimes it's appropriate to have a sense of presence that's very wide and inclusive and wide and inclusive, in the sense that what's happening around you is really alive in your awareness. And sometimes it's like often in meditation, right? Your sphere of attention might be quite particular, just on this felt sense, just on this breath. Sometimes it might be very wide, like we did at the end of the last meditation. often when we're moving around, rather than in meditation, we're not very conscious of how wide or focused our attention is. And often if our attention is wide, for example, it's wide in a fragmented way, rather than in a very clear, settled way. And you can actually take charge of that, right? You can actually take charge. Well, just like you focus a camera lens, sometimes you want a wide angle view, sometimes you want a close-up view. You can actually take charge of the sphere or aperture or range of your awareness. And it makes a difference in terms of what you focus on, what you let in, and what you consciously leave aside. So I want to speak about that a bit, but first I'll just make a little time for any comments you might have. So if there's anything that's arisen, as I've been asking you to reflect on your extroverted or introverted orientation, and as I've been asking you, what gets in the way of presence with others and alone? If there's questions you have about that, I mean, you feel free to just put things in the chat box if you want to just let us all know. But also if you have questions about that, we'll just make 5 or 10 minutes for that now. And that could mean texting questions, or it could mean coming on screen, if you like, and speaking about it that way. And if you want to come on screen, you can use the, whatever it is, that button, the raise your hand button. I don't know, in the reactions thing at the bottom. Jonathan asks, is the teaching related to view in the Eightfold Path? Yeah, it's certainly related, Jonathan. I don't have that in the back of I don't have samadhi, that sense of view, particularly in mind as I'm speaking. But if you can find the connection there, then sure, why not? Lynn, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say that years and years ago, before therapy, I was my neediness was for extroversion, and that's where I was had to have. And then many years of therapy and meditation, and then I did the Myers-Briggs, and I was very much a sort of balanced, and so I live on my own, and that's precious, and it's very much more a sort of going out and coming back and going out and coming back and I can feel if I've had too much and have to really rein in and pull back. And yeah, I was just going to say that really. That's
yeah. So it sounds like, listening to you, that you've really there's like a neurotic version of that, and then there's a healthy version of that. And it sounds like that's really the journey you've made, right? From the neurotic ambivalence or ambiversion, to just being able to nourish yourself from the aloneness time and nourish from contact, and recognize when, enough of one, you have to go back to the other. That's one of the things I actually want to talk about, right? Is that process of like around the holidays and being with others. Sometimes we can feel an enforced sense of like the contact feels obligatory in some way, and actually how important it is to withdraw consciously, even if it's just for 5 minutes, even if it's just the time that you go to the bathroom, right? But that you actually can consciously change the orientation from a more extroverted field of attention to you sit on the loo for 5 minutes, and you actually just settle back into this and this. And
I've got my mum coming on Wednesday, so I shall have 2 weeks of full contact. So I shall have to use my dog walking for
right.
balancing out.
Yeah, going for a walk whether one has a dog or not, going for a walk is also a really good way to fresh air, space, and to let the wind blow out the contact. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, nice to see you. I'm just seeing a couple of the other comments. Curtis says, I've noticed happily that when I meet people, I no longer judge them. I'm more interested in who they are. A huge change in my inner life. Right, beautiful, beautiful. And even if we do judge them, but just that sense of, if you notice a judgment, it's like, it's okay. I don't know if it's, I don't know. This is me owning up. I don't know if it's possible to arrive at some place where judgment never arises. Right? So far, I certainly haven't found that to be true. But if you notice a judgment, then it's got no power really. If you really just notice it, it's like, oh, it's just a judgment. As soon as I know it's a judgment, I know that it's just a conditioned thing. It's just a habit. I don't need to give any attention to it. So then, even though the judgment might be there, one can actually see the person around the judgment or through the judgment or irrespective of the judgment. So it may be, like Curtis is saying, that we find that, oh, the judgments that we used to carry have just dropped away in some way. And we just see the person free from and without those judgments. Wonderful. But I mention that other piece because for any of us, for any of you who feel like, oh, meeting others is full of judgments, that's okay. It's a kind of inner tyranny to expect that judgment should stop or disappear. You know? Because if you have that idea, then when the judgment arises, what do? You judge the judgment. So first there's the judgment of the person, then there's, oh, look at me, I'm being so judgmental. I shouldn't be so judgmental. What's that? That's a judgment on yourself. So it's like with judgment, important to just hold it lightly, right? So that you can see, you just come up with, you just pass somebody on the street, you don't know anything about them, but some judgment arises based on their appearance or the way they walk or I don't know what. And then just to be able to see, oh, it's just a judgment. And then even though it's there, it doesn't really, it's like a drop of colored dye in a large stream of water. It doesn't really color anything. Yeah. Josh talks about reactive triggers to emotional residue. How to be with the emotional issues that arise as a parent, sibling, or friend triggers your sore point. Yeah, that's what we're going to get into a little bit. That's what we're going to get into as the sort of the middle eight, if you like, of today's class. Charles, he says, I tend to dislike small talk. And right. And all the reasons you gave for not being present with others, I find arise in me. I like social contact, but only with a very select few people who are okay with silence and also okay with being more alone. Right. Like reading the same newspaper together. So I really get that, Charlesy, and I concur with you in many ways. And here's the thing, and I'm really glad you brought it up, small talk, right? When we're great lovers of depth and wisdom and beauty and liberation, like we all are, oh, how petty small talk can seem, you know. But and then, like with my family, bless them, they're the masters of small talk. My family, it's all about, you know, very most of it is about stuff that I really find useless to talk about. But hey, they're my family, right? But what's happening often in small talk is it's not really about the content. So the content might be about what the neighbors are doing. That's a lot of my parents is about what the neighbors are doing. I don't even know these neighbors. And I hear in great detail about the life of the neighbors. I don't care, right? Or whatever it's about. So what's helpful, I think, is you don't really need to listen to the content, or at least you'll take it in anyway. But what is really happening is we're saying to each other, are things okay with us? That's what we really mean. We're sort of filling up the space. I'm talking about the neighbors, but I'm really saying, oh, I'm trying to connect to you. I don't really know how to do it but this is the best I do. This is how I do know how to connect. We talk about stuff. And okay, so you don't need to listen while the small talk's happening. You can be listening, not just to the content of what's being said, but you're listening to the whole person. And if it's really just a lot of blah, 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 small talk, what you'll probably find you're listening to is some kind of insecurity in the person. And it may be that the person is just, they're not quite completely sure about you, or they're not completely sure about themselves. And so, or they're not completely sure about anything. So they're filling the space up with stuff to talk about. And I feel like that's a window there for compassion, right? Is realizing, oh, it doesn't, in some ways, it doesn't really matter what we're talking about. But the fact that we're talking is you and me trying to be in contact, doing our best to be in contact. And it may be, as I say, as a practitioner, as a lover of the deep and the true, etc., it may be that you're used to a deeper or better quality of contact in some of your other relationships, like the people you mentioned, right, that you can connect with well, than you get from your family, for example, or from some of the other people that you may end up having to spend time with. But I remember once, and this was very impactful for me, with talking to one of my teachers about, actually it was about Christmas, and it was about being with family, and it was about my judgmental sense that, you know, my family don't understand me, they don't meet me deeply enough, etc. And the response of my teacher was, hey, listen, if you're the one that's done the inner work, if you're the one that's got the range, if you're the one that has some self-understanding, it's your responsibility to meet them where they're at, not to expect them to meet you where you're at. And I found that really humbling, but also just true. Just true. And so that gave me a different way into the small talk. So that you can use the content of the conversation just as a raft or a bridge, right, across which you're meeting each other in the best way that's possible right now. You're meeting each other in whatever, to the extent of whatever the capacity is of the person you're with to meet. Right. I'm not sure if I'm tracking all of these things. Some of them. What about?
You do have one more hand up.
Oh yeah, Jamani. Hi, Jamani. Hey, go ahead, please. Just need to unmute.
Okay.
There we go. Hey.
Oh, hey, how you doing, Martin?
Good. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah. You know, when you were sharing about what came up was last week. Cynthia and I, we went to a party, and it was talking to someone. You know, and it was a party of people that we haven't, you know, we don't usually go to, and it was a friend of Cynthia's, and but what was coming up is that we were talking to this woman, and what you were saying, you know, it was a lot of small talk, blah, blah, you know, and conversation, but the person was going on and on and on and on and on, and what happens when you're with someone who's basically just talking about themselves, and not really, there's not like a back and forth, and the energy, and you're kind of getting, you know, and you're kind of just going with this person's conversation, and then how to pull back, you know, where there can be more of an exchange, you know, where you find yourself getting wrapped up. And then and then Cynthia had to say, I think I'm going to go get a drink, you know, like excusing yourself. And then I was remembering one time that Eckhart Tolle had said, you know, when you're in that kind of connection, or any kind of conversation, to how to be present with yourself at least, 70% of the time, so that you're not losing yourself, and then somehow have a way have an exchange, but also bring in who you are, so that there is an exchange, so that it's not like one-sided, you know.
Yeah.
So I was realizing that that's an important aspect of, you know, the combination of small talk, but also, you know, especially when, and you know, if you don't know someone and you're just kind of getting to know people, and in that, you know, not knowing in a party situation, holiday parties and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm afraid I don't know any way to make it an exchange, because sometimes people, there's just no room to crowbar in anything, and you don't be trying to crowbar your way into a conversation, right? So when it's all just one way, it's like, wow. So no, there's not much room. So what can you do? You can actually use the listening. Oh, great! There's no room for me to speak, so I don't need to worry about that. You can to come back to yourself, to actually feel your feet, like feel your feet on the ground, and be more interested in, be interested in what you're saying, because what they're saying is they're just filling up all the space with stuff about them, right? So you just be more interested in what's happening here than what's happening there. And I don't know that quote by Eckhart Tolle about being present 70% of the time, but I would say no, not 70, 100% of the time, but 70% of the attention, or 80%, right? It's like, so that one of the things with contact is we think to listen to another, or to be with another, or to connect with another, we think we have to go out to the other like this. No. Just stay. You'll still be able to see, you'll still be able to hear, you'll still be able to understand. And if they give you even a little bit of a chance, you'll still be able to respond.
Right.
To the other, right? Easy. We know how to speak and listen. It doesn't need any outward attention, really, which is counterintuitive. We just settle, sense, feel, open, track. And then it's like, you use their blah, 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 blah to give you the opportunity to be with yourself. And again, I think that's a window to compassion. If somebody's filling up all the space, it's, you know, it's because they're unconscious and probably insecure in some way or another. So much so that they've got no room to consider that you're also another person in the conversation.
Right. Yeah.
And then when you've had enough of that, then just like Cynthia, I think you just say, okay, I can talk to you. I'm off to get a drink.
Very cool.
But that sense, right, in the context of having more of your attention be within your own sphere of awareness than out of it. And we'll do a bit of that later, but that sense of like settling and then just expanding, but expanding in such a way that the expansion is happening from here, that you're not going to the other, you're just staying and including in the other. And then if you start to actually get pulled into the vortex of the other, then you come back. And that sense of playing with the aperture. I know you're a filmmaker, so aperture is like playing with the aperture of the lens, you know, of your awareness, wider or tighter.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Cool,
nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I'll just go through a couple more of the questions. 15 new messages. It says here. I can't go through all of those. Let me just go back to the few that I was looking at. What about those being without other people for Christmas? I feel like I have to do such a brave job of allowing myself to feel festive instead of feeling judged for being alone. Yeah, Ellie. So when you say, Ellie, feeling judged for being alone, where's that coming from? Right? Are there actually people around you saying you shouldn't be alone for Christmas, you shouldn't be alone? Or is it you just feeling judged because the general atmosphere of Christmas that we see on the TV and we see in all those movies and everything suggests a lot of company, and that you then feel judged? Because often what's happening when we feel judged, it's our own judgments, right? Judgment goes in three directions. Either it's me judging me, or it's me judging others, or it's me feeling judged by others. Actually, those are all forms of self-judgment. Me judging me is obvious. Me judging others is less obvious, but actually, if you give good attention, you notice that I'm judging others in contrast to myself. It's still a form of self-evaluation. And then feeling judged is we're just projecting the judgment out as if, they must think I'm something or other for being alone at Christmas. They must think I have no friends, or they must think nobody wants to be with me, or whatever it is. But if it's not that, if it's you choosing to be alone, it's like really letting that be your practice, coming back to being okay with you doing you, to use the contemporary phrase my daughter always uses, you do you, Papa. So like just coming back to being okay with you doing you, right? You're not beholden. It's not that you should be any other way. It's not that you should be with others. It's not that you should be festive. It's not that you should anything. So that's a practice, right? It's easier said than done, but that's the practice of not shoulding on yourself. Practice of letting yourself be as you are. And taking solace, like allowing yourself the solace of your aloneness, if that's what works for you. Okay. So there's a few other questions. Let's just take one. I'll take one more question. Give me a moment to read through them a little bit. Yeah, so some of these are just comments rather than questions. Good. Appreciating. Yeah. Oh, good. I was expecting lots of questions, but actually a lot of these are just comments on and appreciations of other things that you've shared. Yeah. All right. Oh, so one more hand. We'll just speak to Plum, and then I think we'll just take like a little 10-minute break because we've been here for a while before we come back. So please go ahead, Plum. You just need to unmute.
Hi, Martin. Thank you
Hi.
for today in Sangha Live. In the reflection of how I lose my presence with others, I don't exactly know how to describe it other than I recognize that I'm not with them and I'm wrapped up in some kind of self-absorption.
Yeah.
Whether it's about my dialogue, and especially when I'm with someone who's quite awake already and I can sense how they're so embodied. Mm-hmm. And then, I notice that. And then listening to, I didn't catch his name, but Cindy's husband, who just commented with you there, and his experience in a party and dealing with others, what came up for me was a story I believe you shared once about attention. And I wish I could remember it. So my question is, can you remember it? It's this student asking a master, like, give me attention. I want your attention. And the master
and the teacher saying, the student was saying to a teacher I know, I feel like I haven't got your whole attention. And the teacher said, no, nobody gets my full attention. Because it was referring to what we were speaking earlier about. No, most of attention stays home. And then it expands to include the other. So my question would be then, when you notice that you're caught up in the vortex of your own self-absorption, in one sense, so two things. One, what's the familiar psychic flavor of that? Like, is it anxiety about what you're doing or what you're saying, for example? Or is it, it's like, what's the flavor?
Well, I'm relying on a recent coffee shop visit just from yesterday, and I remember it's an element of anxiety, and I don't know what, but I remember my hand, my fingers were kind of doing this, and then whoa, okay, where is that? So I'm not sure, and filling space, or
Okay.
I don't know what the psychic.
Okay, so that's just one thing to look out for. So you get familiar with but I don't know if that's a term that you makes sense to you, but the psychic flavor of like the kind of mind state you go into. And then the second one is actually what's happening energetically, like physically. When you lift out, where do you go? Like, so some people, like, it's like, oh, I go up and to the left. So I'm thinking about myself over there somewhere. Right. Or for some of us, it's like, oh, I just go fragmented. Like I feel when I realize that I'm sort of disconnected from being here, I feel like I'm literally, I mean, that's the saying, I'm all over the place. Do you know that? Or is that just an English kind of saying?
Well, I'd be all over the place.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, all over the place. That's
right.
Yeah,
so then you recognize the feel of being, oh, I'm all over the place. Okay. Right. That sense of being a fragmented presence is one where I feel all over the place, and I'm listening to someone, but I'm also maybe fiddling, like you say, with you, because I'm fragmented to myself, and so then that's the opportunity then to get you to. The more you become familiar with that, and the more it's like, because you don't have to do anything to recover a sense of presence, right? Other than what we were sensing, settling, softening, right, and just. So you get familiar with the habit of letting yourself kind of re-land.
Yeah, for me, it was probably up and to the right.
Right. Okay, good.
In a way. And then this art of being completely all about attention here.
Right.
But not out, up and to the right.
Right. And attention here, it doesn't have to be narrow. That's why I talk about this changing lens, you know. It's like actually if you're in a coffee shop, or if you're listening to people and you're also waiting to hear your name when the barista calls it or whatever else, you know, you don't want to be just here in my body, breathing in and out. No, then you'll miss your name being called at the coffee. You won't understand anything that's being said, etc. You'll have your handbag stolen. You know? So you need a lens that's wide and inclusive. And so you get that the feel of the difference between wide and inclusive, but grounded here, which is very different than all over the place. You know, it's like the difference between being spacious and being spaced out. Mm-hmm. So just let that be a practice, right? Getting familiar with that difference.
Yeah, and wanting myself to, and wanting to be with. I don't want to be self-absorbed. I actually do want to be more interested in the other, more with the other. Right. Yeah, that's kind of my area of practice. So thank you.
All right, nice. Thank you. All right, I see Deanna, you have your hand raised as well. So we'll come back to you. We'll make sure time for that. But I'm aware that we've been here a little while, and there's a meditation practice I want to do in a moment. So I'm going to suggest we just take a few minutes break. I see Mani, you want to say something, Mani? Please go ahead.
I do. While we go on break, if folks want to participate in our breakout room, which I think is going to give us an authentic practice towards what we're really engaging with right now in this social situation, we would ask to help us set up these breakout rooms most effectively, that you do one thing, and I'll drop directions on how in the chat. But basically you would go over to your video screen and look for the 3 dots and rename yourself with the word group before your name. So you'll just add the word group to your name on the rename option. I'll drop this in the chat now, an example, and then directions how to. So if you could do that on the break, that will really help us.
Great. Thanks, Mani. Yeah, Josh is just mentioning my mala and using a mala. Mala is a great aid to presence, somehow, just that association, especially in contact. There's a lot going on, right? and therefore just often just the energy activation in the body is a lot going on. And having something to do, that's why Plum was talking about noticing just being fiddly with the fingers. So having a mala is a wonderful way of just directing the kind of excess energy that's circulating into something that has associations with being present, something that there's something, you know, all the different contemplative traditions have some version of beads on a string that they use. It may be to count prayers, it may be not, it may be just to fiddle around with, you know, but there's something that a mala can be really a great sort of device or aid to presence. All right, let's take, when we come back, we're going to do a particular meditation practice, which is a little bit to do with spaciousness and boundaries and transparency. And then I'll set up a little inquiry exercise that I'll invite you to do in the small groups. And then, you know, we'll have some more time as well. So let's just take 10 minutes to, you might want to walk or stretch your legs or make a little tea or something. What I would say is, even though it's a so-called break, it's not a break in practice, right? So just experiment, whether you're with anybody else right now or whether you're alone, experiment with, it's like the sphere of your attention. So as you move off from the screen, just let yourself firstly really be here, here, here. Feel your butt on the seat, etc. And now feel the outline of your body. It's the edges of your arms and legs particularly. And just feel just a little bit beyond, like just letting your sphere of awareness expand. So you're still here, present, alive, and yet your sphere of your attention can just expand a little beyond the edges of your body. A bit, that sense of just expanding into, sensing into the space around you. So let's take 10 minutes and stay tuned. Expanding, expanding. If you expand too much and you feel spaced out, come back a little. If you're doing something specific, like filling the kettle and putting it on, maybe you need to, your attention comes in a little more particularly. And then while you're waiting for it to boil, right? Nothing to do, just letting it expand. Sounds, soundscape, etc. So just playing with, for the next 10 minutes or so, that sense of the center and the edges of your awareness. Let's come back at 22, right? So that's a little less than 15 minutes for that. So I'll see you here at 22, whatever the hour is where you are. Okay. Okay. Welcome back. If you're back and you're going to put your video on, maybe you can do so now. Just lets me see that you're here. And just a reminder, I see that there's at least 50 or 60 of you that have put group in front of your name now, it looks like. But just a reminder, like Mani said, if you we'll do a little breakout group into groups of 3 after the next meditation, just to explore some of what we've been speaking about, some of how we find that we get activated or that we lose contact with ourselves in being around others. And some of you might know that you definitely don't want to do that for whatever reason. I'd encourage you, but hey, no pressure. So, but if you do want to do that, then you could, if you just put the word group in front of your name, then Marnie knows she can do that. And if you want to know how to do that, then when you're in gallery view, you just hover over your own picture. And then there's a little 3 dots in the top corner that lets you, and one of the options is rename. And then you can, when you rename yourself, you just add the word group. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we still have time before that, so it's fine. If you add it now, Marnie will still be able to put you into a group. Yeah. All right. So we've been talking about this sense of an expanding and, a flexible field or a aperture of awareness. And I think often we get the sense from meditation instructions that awareness should be narrow, which is really unhelpful. There's 2 things that give rise to that, I think. One of them is just sometimes the way we hear or interpret meditation instructions, like to be aware of your breathing or something, and we try to do that in a narrow way, as if all I should be aware of is breath and nothing else. Right? So sometimes attention may really absorb into one aspect of experience, but it's not through us trying to be narrow. Trying to be narrow isn't helpful often, because it generates a sense of tension, and then it's like you're pushing against everything else. And then this idea of concentration. There's actually no word that I know in the Pali language or in Buddha's teachings that translates really as concentration. But we tend to imagine or hear, or even sometimes that word might be used, which again contributes to a sense of a sort of a reductive field. And then there's this particular Pali term, ekagata, which means one-pointedness. And one-pointedness, again, sounds like it's like just this breath, just this thought, or just this bodily sensation, something. One-pointedness suggests that all our attention should be focused into one point. But actually, or ekagata, I think, is better understood as a kind of collectedness, that actually the one place, what I often call here-ness, right? It's just the sense that here-ness, everything's happening here. Breathing is being felt here. Thoughts are arising and passing here. And so ekagata is learning, really, like we said earlier on, learning to be here. Not in a narrow way, not in the idea of just of one point as in a dot, but actually as a kind of a one point or that's all inclusive. And then within that, one can then develop the skill of, like this photographic lens, widening and narrowing as is helpful. And again, just like a lens, if you have a lens, if you focus a camera lens on a close-up, you see the granular detail of that which you're exploring and focusing on. But necessarily, with a camera lens, if you're focusing on one particular thing, everything around it will be blurry, right? So it might be like that. You're just focusing on body sensations in meditation. Sounds are still there, coming and going, but they sort of go a bit blurry because you're just not really attending to them. You're not thinking about them. You're not following them. You're not developing pictures of what they represent. Just letting everything around be blurry, and you're letting your attention sense into and settle into and soften into the chosen meditation object, let's say, breathing. When attention is wide and inclusive, like a wide angle lens, right, You see everything. Everything is sort of in focus, but nothing is particular. Nothing is very, very sharp. Right? And that's equally true in meditation. And it might be equally true just in moving through life. If you've got a very wide lens, you might be sitting here just in a sense of expansive presence. It's just all here. Here's the breath. Here are the sounds. Here are the thoughts. Here's everything. And then necessarily, if you have that wide angle attention, nothing is very particular. So if you're really, really going deeply into sensations or breath, like in that close-up style, they'll be very distinct and everything else will be blurry. But because we often practice in that way, we try to have a narrow focus. Then when we have an expansive focus, or when we move out of meditation and we start moving around in the day, like you were doing just now to make tea or something, often people have the unhelpful assumption that being present, being mindful, being awake while making a cup of tea, they expect that there should be that kind of very, very, if I'm mindful, I should be very, very aware of something particular, but not necessarily. That kind of very particular, like a close-up focus is helpful sometimes, but it's not very portable, right, to a wider sense. If you're looking at a flower, you might want to close up on the flower, really to take in its beauty and its perfume. But then when you're going into a busy street, for example, a close-up focus isn't helpful. You need a wide-angle focus of the people and the cars and whatever else is going on around you. And so the same for meditative awareness. Sometimes a close-up focus is helpful when something particular is happening that really needs your attention. We'll explore that later in terms of, contact with others. When there's some emotional residue, when there's some reactivity, when there's anger, right? If you bring angry, that anger needs your attention, right? So, you come in like a close-up. But in other moments, wide angle attention might be much more important. So meditation I'd like to do is has two aspects of it. One aspect is that just that widening field of attention, widening and narrowing, letting your attention be close in, letting everything else go blurry, and then you're letting your attention go wide, but without spacing out. Wide, but really staying here. And for some people, I would say, and you can see for yourself, that's very, very, very helpful way to get a feel for presence or meditative awareness that is portable through the different situations of life. Coming in, and then opening up, depending on what's happening. In the examples that we've had today, might be like Jamani's example of somebody just going on and on and on and on and on and on. You could see for some, it might be you're feeling impatient and frustrated. So you just come in, and so you can actually feel into and take care of the impatience and frustration so that it's not actually running you. You're tracking it. Oh, yeah. How come I'm feeling so frustrated? Oh, yeah, there's no room for me. Oh, yeah, that reminds me maybe of how it was in my family sometimes where I felt there was no room for me, etc. And so you're tracking it. Or it may be that actually when I track it, it's more helpful. Okay, here's this person talking, but let me zoom out. There's a lot else going on here. I can feel my feet on the ground. I can relax my shoulders. I can feel the air and the general hubbub around me. Expanding. So we'll explore that in the meditation, this opening and closing lens of awareness. And then the other thing that we'll explore, which is a bit different, is a sense of transparency. Where all that's going on, it's like it just goes straight through, goes straight through. Often the way we show up to ourselves and to the world is with tension. It's like we're braced. I'm braced against myself, and I'm braced against others. And then to the extent that we're energetically tense, emotionally tense, even actually I would say most essentially existentially tense, right? The more you're taking yourself to be a self, the more everything that happens sort of gets stuck on you. Your own tension means we take everything personally. And so that's very applicable to this sort of situation of being around family or others or around the holidays, etc. The more we are tense, the more we take ourselves personally. And you can't just stop that from happening, right? Because it's habituated over many decades, but you can learn to explore it and to, rather than just taking these tension patterns to be who I am, you can relate to them just as tension patterns. And you can get more and more familiar with the sense of letting yourself relax into a sense of transparency. Particularly, like in moments of meditation practice where you're not being activated by those dreaded other human beings. You know? And you let yourself taste a quality of presence where nothing need get stuck. Breath just passes through. Sounds just pass through. Thoughts just pass through. And that's really, the more we know our primary orientation to life as one of presence rather than one as person, self, the more we can have that taste of transparency. And realize I don't need to take it, I can take things seriously, but I don't need to take them personally. It all, whatever it is, it's quite temporary. Whatever it is, it's just coming and going. Whatever it is, most fundamentally, is nothing to be afraid of. So, let's spend some time in meditation. I'll first of all give a little instruction around this, around just feeling into these different ways of opening and narrowing the field of attention. And then in the second half, we'll just sense into that possibility of a sense of transparency. So please be comfortable. Please be bright. Please take your seat for meditation. Okay, and as you take your seat, first just really sense the natural awareness that's already here. The natural way you can just be in contact with the feeling of sitting. And as you just sense and settle and soften, you might see, where does your attention really want to be? Take a moment to find out, where does your attention really want to be? And despite whatever your habits are, you'll probably find your attention doesn't want to be fragmented, flying around left and right. You might also find that your attention doesn't want to be forced into trying to stay rigidly on one thing like breath. You'll probably find that what your attention most wants is to relax. Your attention wants to be here. So let these first minutes of meditation be about just finding out the way your attention wants to be here. letting your attention settle into being here. Inviting your attention again and again, if necessary, to be here. And letting your attitude be that invitation, so that your attention is welcome. Welcome to be here. Welcome home. So as you settle in this way, seeing if your attention can be like a close-up. So you're really coming inside. Really coming inside. Just, it might be just your belly. Or it might be just the feel of breath. But there's no strain, there's no forcing, there's no rejecting of other elements of experience. It's just allowing your attention to be fine, intimate, close up. So that everything outside of the close-up can just go a little blurry, a little soft. Really coming inside whatever's predominant in your experience right now. Whatever most wants your attention, let that be your close-up object. Like the example we gave of focusing on a flower. Seeing if the object of your attention can be one that you're meeting with loving awareness. Your close-up attention, a way of loving this experience, caring for this experience, tending to this experience. close up, close in. Attentive, tender awareness. When something really touches you, or provokes you, or agitates you, triggers you, sometimes this kind of attention is most important, intimate and tender. Giving yourself the opportunity to track, explore, and digest whatever's going on in some given moment. Just checking as you sit like this that there's no forcing or straining. Your attention isn't a tight one. Now let's just gently, we'll go slowly with this, but I'd like you to let the focus of your awareness start to change, start to open. See if you can do this in a way that really feels gentle. You stay connected and curious as you let the focus of your attention widen, so that the particular that you are focused on softens a little into the overall picture, the overall feel. So you let your attention just start to open into the whole sense of being here. And that means the whole of the body field. It's this dancing field of sensation. So you're letting go of the particular, not expecting to see or feel what's happening quite so sharply, but just allowing more of it. So that this field of here-ness, this ekagata, this one-pointedness, is like an expanding lens, just filling out whole of body. Even though when we say body, we have that sense of the flesh boundary, the physical body. Actually, the felt sense of body is often not quite like that. It's more round. An embodied field of presence, which can also contain the feel of the air around us. A sphere of presence. letting that sphere of presence just gently, gently expand throughout all the bodily sensation, and now also just a little beyond bodily sensation. Field of awareness in which the space around you and the sounds around you are also part of this field, this sphere. A sphere of awareness that on the one hand is becoming more expansive and inclusive, and yet on the other hand, it still feels very much here. Here in a way that's steady, grounded, simple. And just see how much this field of awareness might expand while you're still staying here. Finding out yourself, where are the edges of your sphere of awareness in this moment? It might be that start to expand, and after a while you feel too thin, and you start to be a little spaced out. So just stop and come in a little more again, so that you're still really here. Or it may feel actually that you can just let the edges, the boundaries of awareness just open right up, so that it's edgeless, wide open and vast, and you're still here. So these next few minutes, just play with that. Here and expansive. Wide angle. The expansiveness starts to make you feel a little spaced out. Just emphasize the here-ness a bit more. Wide, but you're still here. Still embodied. And then these last few minutes of the meditation, just inviting you to experiment with transparency. That means letting the whole field of awareness be so clear, light, empty, that anything and everything just passes straight through it. No stickiness, no identification, no problem. Just seeing how possible that is. Just letting yourself find out, what would it be? What would be needed to be here completely transparently? Wide and clear and empty. Undemanding, undefended. Open space of awareness. Vast, empty, luminous awareness. Okay, good. And then last little bit of the meditation then, same question as before. Where does your attention want to settle? So just for these last moments, seeing what's helpful it may be. How we started, right? Just coming into some area of experience that most wants your attention. Or it may be an attention that's just open and expansive. Or it may be that sense of transparency, which we can also sometimes even call goneness. So just a couple of minutes of letting your attention find its own way. close up, or wide angle, or infinite. And now then, coming to the end of the meditation, however you're orientating to experience now, stay with that as you make the transition from the formality of meditation through the raising your eyes and adjusting your posture and moving your body and just taking in the screen and me and the room and everything else. And rather than going out to the sounds and the sights and the movements, rather just staying present in the way you have been, so that sights come to you. So that the way your attention is orientated can just receive the seeing, the moving, the being here. So that even as the formality of meditation ends, the continuity of presence can remain. Okay. So in some ways, it's quite a short time. That was about 25, 27 minutes of meditation. It's quite a short time to get a feel for these different capacities of awareness. But sometimes short meditations are better because there's less opportunity for becoming distracted or spacing out in some way. So, like I say, there's an exercise I'd like you to do, simple exercise, but first it's just tying together the relating of the way we've been practicing in meditation and how one can apply. It's of course not just related to the holidays, it's related to any time, every time, but how one can apply that sense of becoming more and more skillful. That's what our practice is, becoming more skillful with what awareness is and how to apply it in the different moments of the day. When to bring the focus in, when to open it up. And then that third point, the part of the transparency or the goneness, which is very unfamiliar to us at the beginning, having actually more and more a taste of that sense where we actually need no boundaries at all. Which, of course, we might still need social boundaries. We still might need to say no to someone. We still might need to withdraw from some contact in the way we've been speaking about. We still might decide to go and walk the dog for a while, and to just kind of recover our sense of distinctness from whatever there's going on in the social milieu. But we get that taste then from that sense of transparency, even though we still maintain social boundaries in various ways, the feel of no existential boundaries. Feel of a quality of presence that is undefended. Okay. So let's the exercise, really, there's not much formality to it. It's really just an opportunity to hang out in a smaller group with a couple of other people and see what's most alive for you with this kind of material. It may be just in terms of these different forms of presence in the meditation, and in terms of like being with others. And that might be particular to you, like in the next days when you're going to be with others during the holidays, or it might be just the wider field of how you engage with others and the various sort of the friction that can come from being in or out of contact, depending on your extroverted or introverted or ambiverted orientation. So you might frame your inquiry, particularly if it's related to being with others over the holidays in the next little while. You might frame it in terms of that. What seems most helpful or most important to you in terms of showing up, really? What seems most important in terms of show up so that you can both recognize and contact your own, stuff that might arise, the residue that someone mentioned earlier, of the ways we get triggered or by others, by family, etc. Always to hold our own impatience or frustration or judgment or the familiar thing of not being listened to or of being expected to be a certain way, or family still seeing us as if we were 12 years old, not valuing all the deep spiritual work we've done or whatever else it might be, right? The way the grandparents speak to our children, or whatever it might be. It's like, what stands out to you from our reflections today, the meditations, the questions, the general discussion together? What stands out to you as being, like the way to point your compass with that? And it may be that one or other example that somebody's given or that I've mentioned sort of looms large for you, in which case, here's a chance to explore that. Or it may be that nothing particularly looms large, actually, but actually in this moment, in the inquiry, here you are with two other people. So your inquiry might be more about finding out in real time, what's it like to show up with others now? So do you find yourself leaning out towards the others, wondering what they're thinking of you, etc.? Right? And if so, can you track that? You might even make it explicit. Oh, I notice I'm feeling the pressure to say something wise or deep or something. And let me just stay looking at you and stay in contact, but actually come back and feel my seat and stay here. And let's see what comes. What's really juicy in doing any kind of verbal meditation, right? Meditation out loud or inquiry in this sense, is to really not have any idea of what the inquiry is going to be about. And you just what's alive for me? And you let yourself explore it, and then you let the words come. So just like we said earlier about the majority, 70% of the attention being here, so you don't go out to the other. Same with the inquiry, 70% of the attention on not knowing what I'm going to say, So just on what's alive, and then just letting it give voice, letting the words come through the quality of listening to your experience. So Marnie has helpfully typed up some clear version of what I just said in a rambling way. What stands out to you as the way to point your compass through the end of the year in how you show up around others? Nicely framed. Thank you, Marnie. So wow, time goes fast. We'll put you into groups. You've got 4 minutes each, just sort of monologue style. 4 minutes of just sensing and speaking in those terms. Is that clear? So the group will open the room for about 13 minutes. That's 4 minutes each. You'll be in groups of 3, and 1 minute of faffing around time, which it always takes. And then we'll bring you back here in 13 minutes from now. All right? See you in a little bit. see. Great. Well, friends, I think I say this every month, but 3 hours seems like a lot of time to explore some theme, and then we get into it a bit and we sit a bit, and then suddenly time is gone. So we have a little time left. If there are questions or comments or just things standing out from the day and the way we've been exploring, please feel free to use this time. I know there was somebody beginning with D. Diella, was it? Who? Deanna. Yes, there you are. Please, let's go ahead, Deanna.
Hi. Thank you so much for taking my question, and thank you for this beautiful day. I had put my question in the chat actually, and so if you don't mind, I'm just going to read it because I can't really find the words right now. I'm trying to find it. I'd like to just know if you had any thoughts about this. Being the black sheep of the family, I feel that I am not entirely welcome to be with them, even though they will say when pressed that they appreciate me, but they otherwise do not invite me or express that they are interested in me or want me to be with them. Thank you for your wisdom.
Yeah. So, it may be true. I mean, it may be, I don't know your family situation, right? So, it may be true that your lifestyle, your values, your politics, and this might apply to your situation personally or anybody else's here. Certainly in my case, that's true. I feel like my family all seem to belong to each other in terms of their values and their politics and their interests and their aesthetics. And then I'm way off somewhere very different from that. So it may be true that you're different from your family, and it may also be true that your family kind of disapprove of you in various ways. That's what we often mean when we say black sheep, right? The one that is both different and disapproved of. And that by its nature is a little uncomfortable, painful even. And it's only really painful to the extent to which we collude with that idea internally. Do you know what I mean? The degree to which, because my family think I'm the weirdo, I somehow think I take that in and make it true about myself. So how would you say, where would you say you're at in terms of your own comfort with or ownership of the way you are in your lifestyle and your values and all of those things?
I feel actually very fine with where I am.
Good.
And I've been navigating this dynamic with my family for a long time. But only in the past few years, when I've actually turned seriously toward contemplative practice, that I've gained the skills to have some distance on various troubles. But it's still a challenge. It's always a challenge.
Yeah. So it is a challenge. I think by its nature, it's uncomfortable. It's painful to feel a little excluded from, or made separate to the ones, your family, the ones you love. But so there's nothing you can do about that part, right? But what you can do is be really like reminding yourself and grounding yourself in just what you say. I'm comfortable with who I am and how I am. I'm glad to be who I am and how I am. It's a little sad that my family don't seem to be able to appreciate who I am and how I am. But given that there's not much I can do about that, I can keep coming back to the fact that I'm okay with me. I'm okay with me. And then you connect, as best you can. And it's probable that your black sheepness and your difference and your contemplative practice is probably evidence of the fact that actually most of that difference is based on the fact that you've got deeper sensibilities than your family, right? And so they just don't have, probably, I mean, I'm speculating, but usually it's like this, they probably don't have quite the bandwidth or the emotional intelligence or the depth of understanding or something to follow you to the places that you go in your life. And I think that's a helpful reminder. Like, it's not that they just willfully want to reject you, it's just they don't really understand, because your life path has taken you to deeper places than theirs has. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, spot on.
Oh yeah, good. So just reminding yourself of that, right? It's not willful, it's mostly, it's like we find it hard to relate to that which we don't understand, you know?
Yeah.
And so the more, when one's own personal path goes in a great place to a deeper understanding, it's like you've got that much bandwidth for what life is, and they're operating on that much bandwidth. So they can only meet that much of you, but there's actually that much of you. So it's just the way it is that we come for the holidays, and you're only that much of you is going to get seen. And that's sort of just, it's uncomfortable by its nature, but when we understand the process behind it, it's easier to just to go along with that. And then to recover when you leave, to go back to places where you get that, you know, all of you more mirrored.
Yeah. If I could just add one thing, it's challenging out additionally more because as my parents get older, I would like to have, and my brother also, he's, I would just like to have more connection with all of them, and I'm trying, but it's like they're not able to meet me.
Because you probably, even though you want more connection, you'll probably find that that connection can only be within their bandwidth, because there's places they can't meet you. You know, like if you've done a whole bunch of contemplative practice, they just don't know what all that stuff's about. You know, they might watch this 3-hour video and think, oh my God, what a lot of nonsense. You know, so you can have more contact, but you probably will never get the quality of contact that you would like. And that's okay. You can get that, but you won't get it from your family. You just have to get it elsewhere. All right, Deanna.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, welcome. All right, I'm aware that time is short, so we'll see if we can have brief conversations. Jules, go ahead.
Hiya.
Hi.
I want to thank you for really making me feel a lot better about the fact that I might still have judgment and find people boring, but actually it's down to me to work through that. And that I came on today feeling really anxious about the festive period, but actually feel that I have more control within myself to be able to deal with whatever comes up. So I feel a bit relieved that you said that you still had moments of judgment, to be honest, because it feels like it could be a little bit unachievable sometimes. And obviously my best self would like to think that I'm not judgmental and don't sit there thinking, will you just be quiet because you've been speaking for too long.
Yeah.
But I'm also very aware as well that my ego kicks in at that same time as well, because I want to be heard.
Yeah.
How I manage that within my ego element of that. So I guess my question is how do I know whether they're just rattling on, and how do I know when my ego should maybe just take a little bit of a backseat?
Well, your ego should always take a little bit of a backseat. You know.
How do I do that then, Martin?
And then whether they're rattling on or not isn't so important. You do that by being more interested in your own reactivity than you are in their rattling. So they may be rattling, but whether they're rattling or not itself isn't what has the power to corrupt your well-being, right? It's your own collusion with that and your own self-talk around, why the hell do they have to be like that? Why won't they let me go? So it's like, that's the bit, that's the 70-30 thing, right? Or even 80-20, like most of your attention being interested in your own judgments or impatience or whatever, and just like taking care of it so that it can evaporate more easily, you know?
Hopefully I'll live long so I can get to that point.
Right. Yeah, well, short moments many times. What transforms, short moments many times. And like you're saying, zero judgment isn't, whether it's possible or not, isn't even important. It's the idea of having no judgments isn't a helpful goal of practice. What's much more helpful is just the willingness to keep taking your judgments not so personally, just to be able to see them as judgments, so that your vision of what's happening is much wider than the judgment and what that's telling you about what's happening. And then whether the presence or absence of judgment then isn't an issue, because you're just not believing in it. And that's what's freeing. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll briefly then we'll have time for Jonathan and Victoria afterwards. Hey, Jonathan.
Hi, Martin. Good to see you. Thank you for the lens paradigm. I find that very helpful. But I've realized I've got something called aphantasia, which means when I shut my eyes, I can't visualize.
Yeah, I saw it in the text. So do it kinesthetically.
Okay.
Which is actually more helpful, even though I was using a visual sense of camera lens, and of course description is visual. The actual relating to it isn't visual, it's kinesthetic. So feeling that sense of coming in, and then feeling that sense of being wider and wider.
Okay, but what about when you're trying to say feel beyond my skin? How do I do that?
Well, I can't really say how to do that. It's not that when I say feel, it's not like, oh yeah, I feel what's going on over there, right? But you can feel into a sense of being contained or being expansive, right? And the main component of expansiveness is relaxation. Relaxation and sensitivity. So you're sensing. Like right now, there's a fan. I'm in a hot place, so there's a fan blowing, and so the way the air is touching my skin, it's like, oh, it's a reminder of the way sensing goes beyond. So the idea might be, I'm not really sensing beyond my skin. I'm just sensing the touching of the air on my skin. I can't sense outside of myself, my sensory apparatus, my nerves, blah blah blah. But actually, the feel of just expansive awareness is one where we just sort of feel that there's a kind of availability to life that is bigger than just the flesh boundary.
Got it. Thank you. Very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, probably helpful for others too. So thanks.
Yeah. And thank you.
Victoria?
Happy holiday.
Thanks for squeezing me in, Martin. I have a weird situation where, oh dear, I'm very large. I'm there. I don't have time to tell the story. It's not very interesting anyway, but basically 3 years ago, my family banished me. It's kind of like a fairy tale because of an estate issue. My mother passed away, and I have a large extended family, and they're prompted by greed, hatred, and delusion. So I have a daughter, and we're very, very close also because I lost my husband. So it's she and I, that's it. That's our family. So she came for the holidays now, and she's putting a lot of demands on me, and I've been working for the last 3 years on creating boundaries in general in my life because I've never had any boundaries. And I've been on this very intense contemplative spiritual journey. You've been a big part of it and your book. And so I'm wondering how to.
Victoria, you've got 30 seconds to come to the point.
Okay, so the issue is how to balance integrity and keeping my own boundaries that are very vulnerable still, and yet acknowledging that I'm her only family. I'm it. So that's all. Yeah.
So here's the formula. Maybe you've heard me say this before. I've said it to others. Maximum sincerity, minimum time. Right? You can't, if with somebody that you find difficult, you can't be very sincere for very long because they just wear you down, and whether it's around the boundaries or the historical material that's there. But the sincerity and the warmth, like you say, they're your only family, right? You want to be loving to them, so you give them what you can, but you do it short bursts. So you keep going to the bathroom, or you keep going to the kitchen, or you keep going to take a nap, or you keep going for a little walk around the yard or whatever. So, and you use that as a kind of pendulation or regulation. You come back to yourself. It's here, I'm okay, I can manage. And then, so it's a bit what I was saying to the person before, short moments many times. Maximum sincerity for minimum time period. That's the way to surviving family complexities often. You know,
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you
it's
so
the
much.
same.
I'm
It's
glad-
like if you're calling family and they're like, oh, short phone calls. Better to call regularly, short contact, so that you can maintain the sincerity, rather than you put it off because you know it's difficult, and then you feel like you need to talk to them for a long time, and then you get kind of pulled into the vortex of it.
Right. Got it.
All right.
Thank
Good.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
I'm glad you asked, because I meant to get that phrase in there at some point. Maximum sincerity, minimum time contact.
And we did the minimum time too, and the
Yeah.
maximum sincerity. So, okay, thank you.
All right. Well, friends, here's wishing you happy holidays in whatever way you're spending them, and whatever you're managing, you know, whatever you're managing. So we're all managing our hearts, most essentially. We're all managing whatever historical residue is still living in us that we either haven't noticed yet, or that we're actually afraid of meeting, or that is just painful when we come into contact with it. So sensing and settling and softening, that's a good way to manage your heart, through whether you're managing that primarily in being alone, or primarily with others, or whatever your actual situation is. So yeah, thank you for showing up today. Thank you for the goodness of your practice. If you'd like a little more support over the holidays, I am leading a few days of retreat over New Year. So I've done that the last few years, and it's been very sweet, actually. We meet a few times a day, and if you can't make all the sessions live, you can catch up with the recordings if you want. And there's some meditation and some reflection and some little bit of kind of ritual stuff around letting go of the old and opening to the new. And I've probably got a link that I can put in the chat box for that, which is there. So that's on my website. You can have a look, and it's for a few days from 29th through to the 1st of the month. I'll also be leading the daily meditations all day next week for the last week leading up to Christmas. And like Marnie mentioned, I'm going to do like a month long of dedicated sort of daily practice stuff at some point in January. So that's all my propaganda. And, thank you, Marnie, for hosting. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. And I like to invite people at the end of these meetings, just for everyone to unmute and to have a cacophony of well-wishing and greetings and goodbying and happy holidaying and Merry Christmasing. So please feel free as we end together to unmute and all talk at once. So thank you.
Bye. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you, Martin.
Time. Bye. Thank you.
Happy everybody.
Bye,
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
so much.
Well, for this festive period.
Happy holidays.
Christmas.
Happy New Year.
Feliz Navidad.
Have a beautiful.
Well,
Happy solstice. Happy solstice.
yes.
Hanukkah.
Happy everything.
Beautiful.
Happy everything.
Happy everything.
And Buddhism.
Joy and peace. Joy and peace. May all beings be happy. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't take this personally.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Marnie.
See you soon. Bye, everyone. Bye.